Joining us now is Scott Hamilton, who is the executive director of the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Welcome to the show.
Wayne, thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Were you surprised by the election results?
Yes, in two ways. One very positively, we effectively stopped the red wave that so many people predicted, and that's a great thing for democracy. Sadly, however, in some of the reddest states, like where I live in Oklahoma, we pushed the needle only marginally. I say that we celebrate any movement forward, but I was very surprised, especially given some of the polling that we saw for some of the top of the ticket folks that really looked strong in our favor. And the results just didn't bear those polls out. So that was very disappointing.
What do you think accounts for that? Was it a voter suppression situation? Was it just bad polling? Was it the Republicans were more motivated for whatever reason? I mean, what do you think that cause was?
I think it's a few things. I don't think that the polling was very accurate. Interestingly, most of the polling that was done by right-leaning pollsters. I'm not suggesting that they purposely flawed their data, but I do think that there was some bad polling done. Also, one of the things that really did hurt us in Oklahoma, and it goes without question, and that is straight party voting. When you can just make one check mark and then walk out, a lot of people did that, despite the overwhelming sense that people were crossing lines, party lines, to support our gubernatorial candidate. We had such a strong support there, as well as our state superintendent of public education. She constantly polled ahead of her opponent. So I do believe that straight party voting hurt. I think a lot of people that felt comfortable telling a pollster that they would split their tickets in the end just did not do so.
And what role did abortion play, in your view, both in Oklahoma and nationally?
Nationally, I think it played a very big role. I know a lot of the polling was saying that abortion was secondary to the economy or third place to the economy. In Oklahoma, education was the number one priority of voters, but abortion did rank up there. And surprisingly, a number of the Republicans that were interviewed prior to the election said that they would cross party lines to support a woman's right to make choices about her own reproductive health care. In the end, though, those did not translate to votes. But it was definitely something that people were concerned about, are concerned about, because we have some of the harshest anti-abortion laws in the country. And the incumbent who was reelected has publicly sworn that he will sign any legislation at all that is pro-life.
What about a referendum like we had in Kansas and in other states? Every single place we've seen these referendums, the right has lost, and those who are pro-choice have been victorious. Could we see something like that in Oklahoma? And how do you think that would happen?
Yes, I believe we could, Wade, because we're talking now with some allied organizations who have real experience in referendums on this issue and have, frankly, more resources than we as a state party would. But by joining forces with them, I believe that, because interestingly, when we put something to the vote of the people in Oklahoma, it always is a more progressive finding than anything that goes before the legislature. We're looking at medical marijuana, for example. For years, the legislature fought it. Once it was put to a vote of the people, it overwhelmingly wants the support of Oklahomans. In March, we'll be voting on recreational marijuana. I think we'll see something very similar there. So I think that when people have a direct opportunity to be involved in democracy, then there is a greater freedom that comes with that, and also an empowerment, I believe. Now, sadly, in Oklahoma, they've made it harder to put referendums on the ballot. More signatures, more time requirements, because the legislature, frankly, is tired of being beaten by the general public. So we see that that's not so much of a representative democracy here.
Oklahoma is a ruby red state. And do you think GOP losses will diminish interest in promoting the big lie and endangering democracy? Because that is one thing that was a loser. Every in every swing state, at least, the anti-democracy, pro-big lie peddlers lost, particularly with Secretary of State and governor races. What's your view? Do you think there's going to be, at least from that perspective, a less of an attack on democracy because it's proven to be an electoral loser?
That's a tough question to answer. I will say that in this election, we saw less of the big lie rhetoric. Now, some of the people who did win on the Republican side still said things like, "Yeah, there are many questions about the 2020 election that have to be answered," but it was tepid compared to the full-on big lie push that we had seen before. I honestly believe that too many people still believe the big lie. How else can you account for people saying Donald Trump is still my president? So will it change things here? I think as we move forward in these next 2 years, we're going to see less of a propensity to spout the big lie and all of the associated conspiracy theories with it.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the House of Representatives. The Republicans just won that. So that's going to be interesting in terms of promoting these lies and conspiracies.
I'll take that one step further, Wayne. I think it's horrifying.
Like that better than interesting. Actually, that's more accurate.
When you consider Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk actually having some power, then it means the crazies are running Congress. And it's very frightening to me to see where that will go under a McCarthy leadership. Frankly, I think he is probably already scared. They're threatening at any moment to be able to strip away his position. So I would not want that job for all the money in the world, because it's a lose-lose proposition. It's losing for him personally, it's losing for the House, and most of all, it's losing for the people of the United States.
I hear what you're saying. It's a terrible job that he sold his soul for and didn't get. Mitch McConnell also sold his soul. He put together this right-wing Supreme Court. He did not convict Donald Trump in the Senate when he had his opportunity. And then all of this came back to bite him, and now he's not going to be the Senate Majority Leader. So, I mean, some of this is the law of unintended consequences there. What were the main lessons from this election, in your view?
I think Democrats did not do as well as we should have in terms of messaging. You know, we went from a place in our existence where everyone was a doctor of infectious disease and everyone knew all the answers about COVID, to all of a sudden everyone shifting and becoming economists. Now, I am not an economist. My understanding of the stock market is very limited, but I pay attention. But when you just throw out a word like the economy, then people it scares them. And we did not do an adequate job in Oklahoma or nationally, I think, to quell people's fears about the, quote, economy. When you look at high employment rates, when you look at wages going up, yes, inflation is a problem, but that's a problem around the world right now. That's not something created by this administration. It's a number of factors involving literally every country in the world.
You know, it's interesting, Scott, because the Republicans, they portray Biden as this like weak, feeble guy who can't even, get out of bed in the morning. And then on the other hand, they blame him for inflation worldwide and high gas prices worldwide. Like he raised the gas price in Germany and he raised the price of bread in Australia. I mean, come on, you can't have it both ways. Either the guy, is feeble and can barely speak, or he's all powerful. But that's how the team they keep going back and forth with that when it came to the economy, at least.
That's what happened in Oklahoma too, because some of the advertising was just hideous on the Republican side, calling it Bidenflation, tying Biden to every single candidate on the Democrat side. You cannot explain to me how a superintendent of public education is responsible for raising taxes on poor people. It didn't happen, but they hitched her to Biden, who has also not raised taxes on poor people. And they effectively lied to the people, and the people were hungry to eat that lie.
Another issue, we mentioned the economy. Another issue I think that was difficult for Democrats was the Republicans claiming that, crime is up and Democrats are bad with the police. Of course, when you look at the statistics, red states had a higher per capita murder rate. But this is actually a self-inflicted wound in many cases, where Democrats did, come across in some of these cases is not as invested in this. And I think that has to change. I think the next 2 years, we need to do two things. We need to show that, number one, that we are tough on crime, and number two, that we can be tough on crime and also protect minorities from bad apples within the police department and bad police departments themselves. That dual message. And if we don't do that, we are consistently get hammered by Republicans, and that's unfair because they aren't better in crime. In fact, they have no plan whatsoever.
That's like the economy. They can talk economy all day long, but if you don't have something that's better, you have absolutely nothing. But yes, I was shocked, frankly, at how crime dug in its heels in this election. During a gubernatorial debate here in Oklahoma, the Democratic candidate, Joy Hoffmeister, mentioned that crime is higher for major crime in Oklahoma than it is in California and New York. And Governor Stitt scoffed at her, rolled his eyes, and said, "Oklahoma, do you really believe that?" Well, the fact is true. I'm twice as likely to be murdered in Oklahoma City as I was in Brooklyn, New York. That's a reality. And we have open carry in this state, so everyone's got a gun. They walk with their guns. They carry their AK-47s into Starbucks. I guess they're afraid of a barista. We have to reframe the discussion. They grabbed a hold of defund the police. That's not a democratic value. We're not talking about defunding. We're talking about reforming the way we do policing in this country. And unless it's reformed top to bottom, then we will continue to see an infringement on basic civil rights. And minorities will continue to get the short end of the stick. They will be arrested and convicted at much higher rates because that's just the way things are here. So we have to have a national dialogue, and whether that starts in the Democratic Party and works its way out, which will probably have to be that way because Republicans are not interested in the truth here. They're just interested in building these boogeymen that they can trot out whenever it's convenient for them.
Yeah, but I think we present as the Democrats stand for better policing, more effective policing, and the Republicans stand for the status quo, which clearly has not been very effective at all. Another issue that really hurt us with Latinos, particularly, say, in Miami-Dade County, was the socialism. When Bernie Sanders talks about democratic socialism, he means emulating very successful societies, Denmark, Norway. But Latinos in Miami, many of them heard socialism and thought Castro and Maduro. There was a lack of investment to counter that in Miami. And we saw the results where Miami-Dade went Republican. People like their Social Security, Medicare, Obamacare, the VA, as I mentioned earlier. But that label is killing us. And I think we need to drop it and get away from that because it's going to cost us elections. And we're not going to be able to enact programs to actually help people if we're presenting it wrong.
You mentioned the Latino community, and while that certainly is true, it's also true among Republicans in general. You say the word socialist or socialism, and they lose their minds. But these are the same people who want to send their kids to the public schools that my tax dollars help to pay for, and I have no children. I have a vested interest in my society being educated, but I don't have children. So we're not just talking about Social Security. We're not just talking about Medicare and Medicaid and the VA. We're talking about roads and bridges, and we're talking about schools. We're talking about the things that affect our lives every single day. And you're right. If we could just coin a new term, the American way, whatever it is, to get that talking point off of the table, because it makes people just shudder. But the same way, it's funny that they'll throw fascism at Democrats. You have no concept of what you're talking about. When you talk about, the thing that I hear so often, and this is mind-boggling. It's like, did nobody take a junior high school history class? Because conflating communism and socialism, I have been called both at the same time. You're a communist, you're a socialist. Two different things. It doesn't.
Right. I mean, it makes no sense what they say, but but we don't have to help them is my point with that and assist them in any way. Um, another issue I would say that I think we need to really focus on the next 2 years is labor issues and push for better wages, better working conditions, and drive that home. And because that's what we stand for anyway. So why not emphasize it? And we have such far superior policies in every way, shape, and form to Republicans who are for nothing but giving tax breaks to millionaires who do not need them. That's literally their entire program. And we stand for the working man and woman, for working families. And I think we need to emphasize that because our record speaks for itself, but not enough. We need to, it's speaking for itself, but we need to speak for it as well.
Yeah, it's not enough to have a good record on labor issues. We have to show the difference. My staff here at the Oklahoma Democratic Party is unionized. They work under a collective bargaining agreement that we negotiate, and it's fair and it's equitable to both the employer and to the employees. And I'm proud of that. I'm grateful that they have that kind of protection because although I don't think it's needed in this particular environment to offer those levels of protection, I think it sends a powerful message that it's true in almost everything, that we have to protect workers. We've gotten it mixed up in this country. If you look at the number of people who turn back in vacation days at the end of the year because they're afraid to take the time off that they are given to take off. We're afraid that if we come back, we won't have a job. We're afraid that if we take a week's vacation, that someone else will be able to do our work, and then that creates uncertainty. So it's not just labor issues. I think we have to look at how we think about going to work every day and what that means. But I'll tell you something. It's unconscionable to me that a man or a woman in Oklahoma has to have 3 jobs just to pay for rent and utilities and a meager amount of food.
Yeah, it's outrageous. And then they turn around and vote for the person that made that reality their lives. They actually are voting against their interests. And I think we can do a lot with making people understand that. It's a long-term project. It's not that it happens overnight, but I think if we dedicate ourselves to that over and over again, it will sink in with enough people over time.
I think it will too. We have to get away from this ideation thing, though. Donald Trump is a man of the people. He says what's on his mind. He believes the same things I do. No, he doesn't. He doesn't care about you. He's a self-proclaimed billionaire. We don't have any idea what his net worth is. But how can someone like that possibly understand what it's like for you to wake up on Christmas morning and know your kids have no presents under the tree? How can someone like that know what it's like to work your ass off and then still have to go to a food pantry to supplement the food in your house? They don't understand. So we have to quit allowing everyone to have this ideation. If I vote for him, then maybe one day I'll be a millionaire or a billionaire, or I'll have power, or I'll have success, because the two do not equate. Because you vote for someone doesn't make you like that person.
Yeah, and also the scapegoating. I mean, he's like, okay, your life might not be what you thought it would be, but it's because of those people. And that's what Donald Trump and many other Republicans excel in. But then people come to find after they maybe scapegoated people that it didn't improve their lives. That's actually worse because we didn't address the actual problem leading to their situation. It's more of an avoidance than solving the problem.
We're at a place now where it seems like it's just almost impossible for anyone to take blame for a mistake. And that's a shame, because we learn from our mistakes, we grow from them. But if we can never admit that we have made them, then we're making life worse for ourselves. But worse than that, we're making it much worse for other people, because you can only deflect blame so long, and then it finally comes home to roost. But all the people that you've hurt along the way, what does it mean for them?
Well, I would go so far to say accepting blame means loving your country, because unless you identify what is wrong, how it went wrong, and how we can improve it, you're actually going to be degrading the country, because you're not going to be able to make it better. or as in Republican Trump parlance, you're not going to be able to make it great if you don't make adjustments and improvements.
That's the other thing. We have become so used to slogans in marketing and advertising. So that's what this whole mega MAGA crap is about. There's nothing to it. It's a paper mache doll. What is great again? Well, when you get down to it, great again is when black people didn't vote, when women couldn't vote, when women couldn't work, they had to stay home and take care of the kids. Is that when America was great? Not in my estimation. But they have sold it, and we have to ask for a refund.
I couldn't agree with you more. One final question. The Senate just voted to affirm marriage equality. 12 Republican senators supported marriage for gay couples in conservative states, including Mitt Romney, for example. That's huge. However, their support was gained by carving out huge religious exemptions. So religious institutions are free to discriminate against their own employees, for example, and ruin lives, kick young people out of schools. On the other hand, this takes away their ability to be martyrs and claim they are victims who had their religious liberty stripped. It's my view that maybe this is a good thing if it tamps down the culture wars. Maybe more than 70% of Americans support gay marriage right now, which was unthinkable not too long ago. If this Senate votes to give us, say, 80% of what we want, maybe that's good enough in a religious country like America. Discrimination can be strictly contained to mostly evangelical churches and their affiliates. And the 20% of equality that we don't get now can be won by those who are harmed, by sharing their stories and protests to change these churches from within. Because there's factions in all of these churches that want change. Young people are leaving these churches, and they're nationwide. We see a huge number abandoning the religion altogether or finding new religions that are more tolerant. What is your view on the Respect for Marriage Act? Do the religious exemptions go too far, or maybe they tamp down the temperature in a red state like Oklahoma so we can move on to other issues?
But Wayne, think about when you and I met, 13 years ago, something like that? And considering where we are today, 13 years ago, the idea of same-gender marriage is something that neither one of us could really envision as happening probably in our lifetimes. So we have seen progress. And this act is more progress. Does it give us everything we want? No. But if it moves us forward, and as you indicate, then we can look at how lives are still being ruined because of religious freedom or religious liberty, then that keeps the conversation going. But for the moment, it takes this away as a talking point. You mentioned the national statistics. They're not dissimilar from right here in Oklahoma. Oklahomans, the majority of them believe that same-gender marriage should be recognized and legal in the United States anywhere you live. Why did only 12 Republicans vote for it? I frankly think a lot more of them would have voted for it if they weren't so afraid of upsetting their base.
Yeah, but they're going to have a reckoning with that base because, number one, they miscalculated on abortion, and it is backfiring in a major way. The religious right, as we've heard a million times, is the dog that caught the bumper, and now they don't know what the hell to do because it's a lot more unpopular, and now Republicans are saddled with this abortion issue. And suddenly, if we take away this whole religious liberty issue, and there's a lot of other areas where they are not succeeding. The democracy issue is another leg of that chair that is gone. And it seems all they have left at this point is imposing their religion, things like school prayer and things like that are also deeply unpopular. And so if Republicans want to tie and hitch their wagon to this, the religious rights agenda, they're going down long term. This is not going to end well for them. So that's why I say that's why I'm for, maybe we should just not fight every fight and take this as an advancement with marriage and just point out how unfair and mean and hurtful these institutions are, how they're ruining the lives of young people and teachers and good people. And over time, I think we get many of these religious institutions to, either shrink their membership or change internally, and then we can accomplish the same thing.
I think you're right. And honestly, I don't think it's going to have to be us that does the talking on that. I believe that enough of these churches, will see that the old people that are there, their kids are leaving, their grandkids have left, and they're going to have to reinvent themselves in a way that is not so diabolically opposed to what much of the nation believes. As a person of faith, it distresses me at how the religious right has co-opted the term Christian and used it as this blanket baseball bat. But I believe that at least part of that work is going to be done for us as they see their numbers dwindle, as they see their support dwindle, and then you're going to be left with some Republicans in Congress who don't have the base that they did have, and they're going to have to either change or they're going to have to leave as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why I'm saying, let's just engage. Let's just take this victory and let them tear each other apart from within if they're gonna be so opposed to what the American people stand for.
That's it. Yes, as disappointed as I am in the election outcomes here in Oklahoma, as I said at the top of your show, I'm gratified with the progress that we made as a nation. And I am encouraged that even states who have traditionally voted red are going to start seeing glimmers of light breaking through the darkness. And I think that as you pointed out before, this is not an easy fix and it's not going to happen overnight. But if we stay on point, if we sharpen our messaging, I believe that we will move our country to a time and a place where everyone can be proud to live here, and as opposed to looking at exit strategies for how to get out of here.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining the Wayne Besen Show.
Always a pleasure, Wayne. Thank you.